Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange MacCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuitive Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, and a warm welcome to the Elevate Business podcast. Both myself, Ange MacCabe, and Scott Russ are your hosts. We have the pleasure of introducing you to Guillaume Wiatr, who is the principal and founder of MetaHelm. As a business strategy consultant, leadership coach, writer, and artist, Guillaume teaches CEOs, founders, and business owners how to energize their teams with strategic narratives grounded in their organization's purpose. As a global speaker, Guillaume challenges the business community to go beyond the tactical aspects of storytelling. He invites us to realize that innovation only happens if we know how to create new narratives. Welcome, Guillaume. So tell me, Guillaume, a little bit more about your business and what you do. I didn't have the pleasure, like Scott has, to get acquainted with you yet.
So my company is called MetaHelm, and I specialize in strategic narrative. And what I do is that I help CEOs, founders, business entrepreneurs, business owners, align people and accelerate the rate of adoption of their product. And typically, it's an innovative product. It's something that may be called, qualified as disruptive, but it's something new, something that changes the rules of the market or an industry. That's really the intent there. Very early on, when I was a kid, I was always about dissecting, things, little machines here and there, putting them back together with a new aspect to it. And then my career took me on a path of working with inventors, engineers, big thinkers, forward thinkers. And very quickly, I realized that it's great to have an invention, but if no one adopts it, it's not innovation. So for me, innovation is invention plus adoption. That's just a simple equation here. But I can tell you, we all struggle with that equation. Most companies will have, and I'll hear this every day. Change is the hardest thing to do.
It is.
So that's what my company specializes in. The company started here in Seattle in 2016, but I've been working on this topic since 2001.
Okay.
So 20 years.
Okay. Okay. And what has gotten you from the interest of things tech-like or innovative or disruptive into the space of something that's so specific around adoption?
Well, how about I tell you a story?
Please.
Because that's what I focus on. In 2001, I was a young consultant. I was in my mid-late 20s, and I was working for a startup that was specialized in helping companies digitize their business model and turn large repositories of content, catalog, and products into digital products. Today you go do some e-shopping. It's normal to see those beautiful photos and descriptions and be able to have a wonderful shopping experience. Back in 2000, it was not the case. Companies were struggling to figure out how are we going to turn, a big paper catalog to a digital experience. So I was brought into a very large company for this technical expertise. And the first meeting, so I'm here, I'm kicking off this project with the head of procurement and about 20 engineers, very experienced people in this room. And very quickly, I realized, okay, this is not going to go well. I'm not going to be able to do my work. And if I don't if I don't listen to my gut, my feelings, if I don't have the courage to say something, we may end up this meeting with some kind of status quo that's not going to take us on the right path. And I might be fired, in a couple of weeks. So that's what my gut was telling me.
Mm.
And on a whim, I thought, okay, the best way, what can we do? The best way we could do this is to start using visualization. So there was a stack of paper next to the board, the conference table. And I said, I have this, special way to deal with this situation. Do you mind if we draw the project? And they all looked at me with kind of weird eyes and what is that, drawing the project? So I asked if everybody could draw the project. I gave people, and in 2-3 minutes, people could just draw like a sketch. We posted all the drawings on the board, on the whiteboard with magnets, and the drawing did the rest. They just showed people that there was no alignment whatsoever. Everybody was thinking of a different story and they could not work together. Right. So that's what started my quest for looking for solutions, looking for new ideas to align people around big ideas, big innovating thinking, and really at the end of the day, finding ways to create more believers in something new. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the beginning of that journey.
I think that's phenomenal. I like it.
Kind of an accident, I'll tell this to you now, and I make it sound like it was the great, story, and I saved the day and all that. I was so scared. I was so so nervous. In your 20s, you think about your career, and then you look at older people with kind of this idea. They probably know way more than me. They have more experience, and also, hierarchy. It puts a lot of pressure. You're trying to conform 100%. To what other consultants do. Mm-hmm. And there was a big departure from what other people did, for sure. Mm-hmm. I was really scared. Almost my pants that day.
So you sparked something in me that I'm kind of really curious about, because we do see it time and again. And I'd like to hear from your lens or your experience, what is it about alignment that's so challenging?
Well, for sure, it's challenging, Scott. This is it's kind of one of the number one problems if you think about it. In the beginning, it's just maybe it's a small company, it's a startup, and it's maybe you, the founder, and you gather a small group, and there is alignment. There is this clear idea. The message is probably shaped fairly well, and where we're headed. And then the company grows, alignment becomes more difficult. And also, if you look at the research shows that most companies go through kind of the same cycle of, in the beginning, it's kind of difficult to get some lift. We may have some early adopters, and there is this area called the chasm, where it's kind of a tipping point where it's kind of make or break. And in that moment, if there is doubt, if there is, things that are unclear, if there are too many layers of strategies, that's when alignment goes 360 degrees. That's what I see. That's the pattern that I see all the time. These days, what we're seeing with the change in the way we work with COVID, with remote work, that challenge has become now even more even bigger, even emphasized, I would say. How do you keep people aligned when you don't see them? It's sometimes hard to communicate. You're not in the same room. And also, the way we think about organization is evolving. It's not, just the top-down kind of pyramid structure where orders trickle down. It's not the way this works anymore. It's a lot more agile. People want to have their say in how the company runs. Also, data shows us that people want to work for companies who have a purpose, right? Organizations who want to drive their impact somewhere way beyond profit. So all of those factors combined make the job of the CEO of leadership, the leadership team, even harder. And if they don't start by showing the example and working on their own alignment, guess what? It's just a magnifier. So I think to summarize my long answer, Scott, I think maybe it's a sum of different things. It's a sum of components. One thing that I was thinking about as I'm answering this question is also now, if you look at way back, I'm talking hundreds of thousands of years back. Like we are the civilization. We are a species of people who's doing pretty well on the planet compared to other species so far, from what we can understand. And it's interesting to see how we came up with countries and religions and those large institutions that have made human evolution possible. And the one thing that the common denominator here is our capacity to believe in a myth, in something that does not exist, only in our brain, like a picture that we can build together. And how do we do this? We do this through the power of stories.
Right.
So misalignment, is really amplified where the myth, the projection we have about our business is not clear. It's not common. Also, I see it when it's not exciting. Like you can have like a mission statement, or where it's like, oh, we have this charter for 2022. Right now, people are doing planning, right? They're doing strategic planning, and they're going to write those, all those intentions and commitments to their business. But if it's not exciting to people, if it's not emotionally resonant, it's just going to go pretty quickly down the drain.
And I think wrapping my head around this, through the art of storytelling, we can align with a common purpose. But because we have different things or beliefs or different definitions, that's where there's a need for that alignment piece.
Yeah, that's true. And here, Ange, I think in your comment, you're touching to the core of the problem that I've been trying to fix. Is that so? If you look at the stack of things we have to align people, we've got, what do you do when you want to align people? You say, okay, let's do a meeting. I want to align on what we're doing right now, what we want to do next month. So we've got meetings. You could do now. You've got technology. Also, you can have everybody on Slack or on common spaces where it's easier to communicate. There are different methods, KPIs. I mean, there is a long list of things. And then in the last 10 to 20 years, there's storytelling. So storytelling is a big buzz thing. Everybody should be a good storyteller and all that. Just the definition of storytelling, to your point, Ange, is it's good, but to me, it's kind of broken too. I sometimes say that business storytelling is dead. Why? Because we're adding more stories to the mix. We're adding more confusion to the mix. And people see one story on their website, one story in their meetings, another story from their customers or their clients. And so storytelling is a very powerful tool, but you have to use it in a very specific way. And that's what I call building a narrative. I make a difference between story and narrative. All your stories are all over the place. You don't have a narrative. Like it's one thing, one day it's white, one day it's black, another day it's gray. People get lost, right? But if the narrative, the common denominator, is not clear enough, you can add all the stories you want. You're actually adding to the problem.
And tell me more about this. Because when you say storytelling and narrative, I'm thinking from a business facing perspective. Tell me more about the insides of organization. How does this align with things like culture?
So culture, the way I understand culture, you guys, that's why I was excited to have this conversation with you, because you guys are the culture experts, and and you correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding of culture is how we do things around here. That's the definition I like, because it's easy for me to grasp. Is that fair enough?
I can get behind that narrative.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, at least for our listeners, that may be helpful. I don't want to oversimplify things, but for me, as a non-culture expert, that's the definition. I'm a user of the definition of culture all the time. The work that I do is heavily reliant on culture, and if you think about it, the way we do things around here is repeated through language, through mimetism, like you're copying what other people do. So say you onboard a new person, there is an onboarding process, hopefully a guide, and we go through culture, and there's some trainings, and we're trying to have people conform to a set of guidelines, right? And these cultural elements, too, I see these all the time. They are portrayed through stories, right? And so that's the connection right there. So when we say, hey, we are I don't know, I'm trying to find an example. In this company, the culture is very much about inclusivity, for instance. It's a big topic right now. What's the narrative around inclusivity? See how I use story and narrative together? What's the narrative? What's the theme? Like, what do we associate to this narrative? So to me, that's the connection right there. And narrative.
Yeah. Oftentimes, and just building off of that, oftentimes what we see is what's written on the wall. So the proverbial policies is not really in alignment with day-to-day actions. So I guess there's two oftentimes intersects or parallels of culture and what we see. So it's what we expect and what we're putting forward from a policy perspective. And then what's the stories behind the scenes? So, you want to chat with Scott because he's great at operations. He can mentor you there. Go to Ange for, visionary, or if you want to have a good chat about, children or something like that. Right. So that's kind of where that kind of has an intersect. And from a leadership perspective, we may have a policy to identify that there's an open door policy, inclusivity, et cetera. But then sometimes there's things that we do or say that contravenes what we've have written on those pages, or sometimes it aligns, right? So I think that's where there's some parity with regards to narrative versus the storytelling, and making sure that there's the purpose that joins it together.
This resonates so well. Let me just add another example that I see in other domains.
Yeah.
When I work with my clients on design and product development processes, we have all those intentions about how we're going to build a product. We want to be agile. We want to put it's the customer at the center. So that's all the talk, right? That's the talk. We're talking. We're very good at this, and we have this process well documented. And when comes the walk, that's where the narrative helps you execute on the walk or not, and that's the deal breaker right there. If your narrative is not powerful enough, if it doesn't align people enough, if it's not strong enough, you can write all the procedures you want. It's not going to be implemented in the reality. So that touches research and development, product design, culture in your guys' domain. That touches also, guess what? Marketing. Companies with wonderful websites. Like, we've got the best web, and the website tells a story. Hopefully the story of the customer, and the story is really, really engaging. And so, sales are happening, but then what's the connection between that aspect of the business and inside? Maybe you order the product and there's some questions or, delay with the delivery, and you call the company. How does this experience aligns with what's being said on the website, right? I hear it all the time. I actually worked with so one of my clients is the L'Oreal group, and L'Oreal has different brands, and it happens also in very sophisticated organizations like this one, very mature organizations, where we say we're going to launch a product, and the research and development was not on the same page, was misaligned. So we've got all, and L'Oreal, out of all cosmetics companies, have massive amount of procedures, right? They're really, really like the Rolls Royce of cosmetics production. They can do it all, and still, and that's a topic that they're very, very cognizant of, very, very careful. So I also recognizing as a great company for that is, sometimes there are misunderstanding, there are misalignment, and the narrative of the brand might not be as clear as they think. They innovate a lot, and how do they change the narrative, for skincare, for example, for makeup and so on.
And so I'm curious, coming down, I guess, at a smaller level. So let's say I'm a leader. I have a team of 20 or 30 employees, and I'm facing misalignment. Maybe it's among my executive team. Maybe it's getting trickled down elsewhere. How do I leverage narrative or maybe other tools to help kind of bring people on the same page? Where not everyone, it's not always easy, the vision you have in your head and helping share that with others.
Yeah, well, congratulations, Scott, for being a leader, first of all.
in this scenario?
Yes, in this scenario. I mean, in the scenario, it's I say congratulations because I'm assuming that there is a certain level of trust. There's something to work with, right? That was my point here in saying we've got something to work with. We've got relationships, and so okay. So storytelling is very often understood as something that marketing will do because it may require a certain level of writing skills or being eloquent. Not everybody has that skill. So if you are a leader and if you're already thinking, hey, I should probably do something about our narrative, that's the first thing I would do, is recognize that this is your role. Don't delegate it. Don't abdicate it. Do it on your own, but don't do it alone. But to me, this is the role of leadership. So first of all, recognize that and tell your team that you are you want to make some commitment around this. Like you want this to be to a better place. The second stage is taking stock of and listening. Really, starting with listening and like what do people say about the company internally, externally, individually, and collectively. In those four areas. And so what is going on? Like, what's the perception? So maybe some people may say, well, it's branding. Yeah, branding is just for the outside. I'm talking about also the inside. So really, like doing more listening that you can imagine, Scott. If you think a certain amount is 1, you should do 10. So that's the second step, and the third step is always balancing between what has happened in the past and where you're headed moving forward. And so you might say, well, we have a mission and vision statement, but who crafted that mission statement? Who crafted that vision statement? Maybe just a small set of people. How can you include your team in crafting where people want to go? Right? A narrative is open-ended versus a story. A story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So you've got customer stories, you've got your origin story, you've got stories about how you solve problems internally, stories about how you could resolve conflict. And so now a narrative takes us into the future. A narrative has a beginning, a middle, but no end. So you have to create a safe space where you would want to invite people to share what's their biggest dream about your company and how do they see themselves helping that opportunity. Hopefully, and that's kind of the test here. Hopefully, your guy, and that's where you test alignments. It's like, what impact do we want to have? Why do we exist as a company? That's also where you merge purpose here. So this is kind of the sequence. And then I always see 3 stages. The first one is I recognize what our narrative is. I heard it. I kind of see it. Okay. But I don't necessarily agree with it yet, or I don't necessarily believe in it yet. But I admit that this is what this company is about. The second stage is to start really understanding it and trying to operate in a new fashion. And the third stage is really believing in it. And that's the ultimate dream of all CEOs. They want to create new believers.
Definitely. And so this is like a relatively new concept in my world to understand a little bit further. Help me understand when it comes to adopting the shift in this mindset, like what would you recommend or what advice can you give for leaders seeking to develop team alignment through the narrative concepts?
Right. Well, the number one advice I give is again is including their team, and picking. It's a strategic narrative is always never done because it as you know, as you've hopefully that comes through my our dialogue today. It's constantly evolving, but it's always due. So what you might want to do is map out throughout the years what are going to be the events, the launches, what are going to be the specific actions where you need that narrative to show up internally and externally. So oftentimes my clients call me for investors pitches. That's one type of event, or marketing, gathering. You can have say you have a train the trainer event. That's a great example here. Company town hall, product launches. You want to map these out, and you want to treat these as events, as a creation, and then the possibility to evolve the narrative during those events. So the beauty of it is that they have a deadline. So we have to agree about what it's going to sound like, what it's going to be like, and then when we show up with a new narrative, guess what? We have to be accountable for how we walk that talk after, right? So if we say, hey, we're pivoting this company, we're repositioning, or we're confirming, our direction, we're dabbling down on our bets to go, say, to a new geographical location. That's an example I'm pulling from another of my clients. We're dabbling down this geographical location. So why do we want to do this? What's going to be the impact on our market, society? What do we want to change out there? And then make sure that you break it down into concrete actions. Commitment is really, really big here. So it requires courage, for sure. It requires commitment. But it's overall a method that is of simplification of your messages. If you can picture, going from a kind of a quagmire of different messages and stories and documents, and maybe you have a planning document, you have a mission and vision, to moving to a central set of messages that kind of aligns everything else, like a hub and some spokes around it. That's the idea there.
It's fantastic.
I think one thing you touched on there, Guillaume, is not missing the opportunity to keep talking about that vision and keep talking about that narrative at town halls, at meetings, at these different events that you have within the organization, where, again, these are all missed opportunities if you're not not offering up opportunities for others to become believers in where the company is going.
Yeah, so one of my clients in France is called Questio. It's a consulting firm specialized in sales performance, sales development. So they work with teams of sales, business development people, and the narrative that they come from, which is kind of the common way to look at sales, is a metaphor. We people think of sales as a war, the war for business. We are taking over new market shares. We're building a beachhead. You can hear all that language around the war, and their new narrative, the new way, the way they reframe how people look at this is unleashing and liberating sales potential, and the rest will follow. That's the idea there. And I helped the CEO reveal this within himself. It comes from his origin story, and then share it with his team. So it was a process of experimentation facilitated by the tools I bring in. And then at some point they were really, really excited. One thing that didn't realize is the amount of repetition they were going to have to do to make this real. And so on a scale of 1 to 10, there are probably, 10 being a lot, 1 being the minimum, they're probably at a 2 or 3. Once in a while, the CEO would throw in a conversation, kind of occasionally, this idea of liberating the sales potential. And I said, no, you've got to put pedal to the metal here. You've got to almost tattoo it on your skin. Okay, temporary tattoo, that's enough. But it's got to be everywhere. But do what you want. Print stickers, print T-shirts, put it on a mug, repeat it over and over and over and over. Repetition, is so essential. People will kind of think it's weird at the beginning and then take it seriously, and then ultimately ask the right questions. That's another tip I'd like to leave our listeners with. It's like you have no idea how much more you need to repeat yourself when you do this strategic narrative work. You've got to say it over and over and over, and you will hit a phase where you kind of second guess yourself. Like, am I saying this too much? Do I really believe what I'm saying here? Is this really the narrative? So that's when a good leadership coach comes in and should help. That's not the work that I do, but right, that's the work that you guys do. But really, that's really essential. There is like having the courage, having the self-awareness to just being dedicated to this. Salesforce, Mark Benioff. There's a very cool story about how he became a market leader through that technique. And he had this in the I think it was in the mid 90s. He brought in a completely new technology, was now we call it cloud computing, cloud, and it's normal for us now. But back in the 90s, it was kind of a crazy idea. If you thought about software, it was a CD-ROM you would get, and you had to install it and all that good stuff. So he had those stickers printed with the word software in the middle and the round red circle, crossed off saying no software. And that was the sticker there. And he would repeat it, all the time. And Salesforce has repeated this message for over a decade. They started all of the conferences with that message, kind of like, what you do when you're part of a religion almost. The ceremony and this tradition of repeating the same words. That's a very human thing. That's where it comes from. So
that's fantastic.
How do you guys like that?
I think it's great, Guillaume, and I think it's something that we can speak of for another hour or two. But just being respectful of your time here as well. I'd like to ask, maybe Ange, you want to jump in and ask the last question here?
Yeah, for sure.
Before you jump in, I hope I really next time I see you, I want to see that tattoo on your arm.
Yeah.
Your company.
You're gonna hold me accountable. I don't know if we're gonna schedule our next meeting then.
Can we negotiate, Guillaume, with a T-shirt? Would that be suffice?
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, definitely. We're actually doing something for charity locally here in Nova Scotia, where we have It Starts With You T-shirt. So it's written, it starts with you around the collar, and on the back, it has our logo, and it just says our tagline, Elevate from Within. And so we feel strongly about supporting children and families in Nova Scotia. So we've branded T-shirts and selling on behalf of that organization.
Nice.
Yeah. But thank you. Yes. But back to you, Guillaume. Tell us, what are 3 words of inspiration that you would want the world to hear?
The first word today, that answer is probably changing all the time in my world. And as of this morning, as of today, the first word is probably purpose. I think purpose is really the new way to get to a better world and really change so many things. And we if you think purpose is just words, it's a good start. But purpose is really how you behave every day. The second word I'd like to talk about is risk. Taking the risk is essential. We're not gonna be able to tackle together the changes that we have coming at us with climate change, with new ways to do business, with some movements or that kind of tend to separate us and divide us a little bit. So taking the risk to put your voice out there, and social media these days for instance, is a great platform for CEOs to express themselves. And I would love to see more CEOs with great, positive, progressive ideas grab the mic and take the risk to speak up. That's number 2. I have a third one, right?
Yeah, you do.
Third one is passion. I mean, that defines who I am, I think, pretty well. And so many, people, it goes along with risk. People are sometimes a little shy or a little timid, or, bring it on. Passion. If you want more people to believe in your business, you have to believe in it yourself first.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. We really enjoy all of your insights and the storytelling around narrative and purpose. It's really brought together some passionate concepts that you have, and we really enjoyed learning about it. And I'm confident to speak on behalf of our subscribers as well. So we appreciate you showing up and showing off essentially your talents and what you have to offer your CEOs that you work with, Guillaume.
My pleasure, Ange. This is thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to have this conversation with you. It was so exciting.
Yes, most definitely. And for those of you who would like to learn more about Guillaume and what he has to offer, we're going to provide a link to the company profile on the Elevate Business Podcast title page. Take good care. Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuitive Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious.